Okay. Well, this is going to be, I think, a pretty fun little discussion. We're going to talk about thought today. So, to start with, I thought, what have you noticed about thought? Anybody have any?
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and just
okay.
speak.
Oh, just that in my life, especially, just knowing that when I have a thought, that it's good to see, well, is that true or is that not true?
Okay.
And if I'm sensitive enough and aware enough that I can tell that, like, there's a different vibration to it.
Okay. So you
Sometimes I get that.
okay, so you did notice that thought's a vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel it, can't you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can, and it's interesting. So that's one of the things I want to do here is let's establish what we know about it. We know it's a vibration. What else do we know about thought?
Sometimes they seem completely random out of the blue. And
Right.
sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not surprised. I'm
Right.
thinking about that because it's something going on in my life.
Right. So thoughts either flow from a similar thought to a similar thought, or a similar thought to a dissimilar thought, right? So if it goes from one thought and then dissimilar thought, we label it random, or my mind's wandering, right? But if I concentrate on a thought and then it goes to another thought that's really related to it and it holds my focus, then it's similar, and so I feel like I'm focusing my mind, but I'm concentrating. So concentration, which is a state of mind, happens when I hold awareness at a single thought or a similar train of thoughts, right? So what do we have to do to get that to happen, to get thought to go into similar?
I think meditation is a great tool to allow you to do that deep dive.
Right, but
Yeah.
just sitting here, if we were going to just go from to a similar thought right now, how would that happen? This is why I want you to, we're
Focus.
really, huh?
You focus.
You focus, right. And then some part of your mind directs the thought, doesn't it? I mean, because what is a thought?
I
Thought is
think
basically, according to the Rajyoga Sutras, thought is a vritti, or a wave. Okay. So if it's a wave, what do we, anybody, and here I'm going to get into science a little bit. So we know on a quantum level, so that everything functions, can as a wave or a particle, or like light can do both, depending on who's doing the observing, right? So anyway, I'm not going to go into that end of it, but thought is energy, because energy causes the wave. So what is a wave? It's just energy. It isn't something unto itself, right? Like there isn't an entity called a wave. Like even if you look at the ocean, what causes a wave? Energy flowing through the molecules of the water, right? So we're gonna go on to share screen. We're gonna watch a little video here for a minute. Okay, here we go.
Sound waves in water and sound waves in air behave differently because of the physical differences between air and water. The intensity of a sound wave depends not only on the pressure of the wave, but also the density and sound speed of the medium through which the sound is traveling. Sounds in water and sounds in air that have the same pressures have very different intensities because the density of water is about 800 times greater than the density of air. Sound levels given in decibels in water are not the same as sound levels given in decibels in air.
Okay. I'm going to play it again. If we can get it, go back to the beginning. Go back to the beginning.
Sound waves in water and sound waves in air behave differently because of the physical differences between air and water. The intensity of a sound wave depends not only on the pressure of the wave, but also the density and sound speed of the medium through which the sound is traveling. Sounds in water and sounds in air that have the same pressures have very different intensities because the density of water is about 800 times greater than the density of air. Sound levels given in decibels in water are not the same as sound levels given in decibels in air.
Okay. Fascinating, huh? Now, if I can get back to our picture. Oh, I don't want to go up into this. Yeah, let's stop share. So, what does that tell us? If we think about mind, and these are just conjectures that I've come up with in my own exploration of what is thought and consciousness and stuff. So I could be totally wrong, but I doubt it. The thing is that if we think about thought as a wave moving through something, which we call mind, then we can think of mind as actually existing as a substance that carries the energy of the thought wave through it, right? So instead of, a lot of times it's hard for us to grasp what mind is. But if we think of it in the Rajyoga Sutras, it says, you know, meditation is the cessation of all thought wave. So, even Patanjali back, several thousand years ago was saying, thought is a wave. It has energy, and that energy that is flowing through the medium called the mind. So we can think about the mind as being either water or air, has a certain density to it. And what we noticed was that the density of the water affects how quickly the thought travels, right? So I would bet that the mind is a really, really a very not a dense state of beingness. It's a substance. I really think of mind. So if we were to think of, I know we've talked about the sheaths before. So if we know there's the physical sheath, and that's the one that we can see. It's really dense. But then we also know that we have this mental sheath, right? We have this part of ourselves that is experiencing thought and memory. We can't see it, but we know it exists. We also know we have vital sheath, which is this life force energy that's flowing through us. We also know that we have a causal sheath. So the causal sheath comes from our soul. It's the record of our um, past lives. It's what stores the thought waves that were created during past experiences, and that causal, that's what causes us to incarnate. We also know that in there we can experience the self itself. And how do we experience the self? We can experience it as light. We can experience it as tingles rushing through the body. We can experience it as a sense of knowingness in our consciousness. We can experience it as a feeling of love and openness and joy in our heart space. We can experience a total oneness with a total integration between all the different aspects of my beingness, and we experience that as wellness. So I want to take a look here first at a couple of definitions. And this comes out of the Natural Evolution of Consciousness manual that I wrote. It is published. If you want to go and track it down on Patreon, you can certainly do that. I don't know. Can you see that, or did I do that wrong?
I don't see it just
No,
yet.
don't see it.
All right, there we go. Forgot. Got it
Aha,
this way.
yes.
Okay, so in this, we can think of consciousness, we can define it as awareness, and its inherent characteristic of everything in the universe. It functions through the brain and is referred to as mind. Okay, that just gives us a little place to start. So the mind refers to a person's awareness. So other characteristics manifest as the ability to perceive, analyze, sense, categorize thoughts, experiences, and objects in the inner and outer world. And we know that we can experience mind in two different places. We can experience it within ourselves on the inside, which is our inner world. And that place inside us is extremely plastic, meaning that we can quickly move from one thought to another thought. So, thought that's traveling in our inner world, in our mind space, can move really, really fast. And the other thing that we know, the more we evolve spiritually, is that all of our mind spaces are connected together, right? It's just one big pool of mind space, right? And so that's how we can intuitively connect with one another and send each other thoughts and feelings and have knowingness about things. It's a little harder to move thought in the outer world because we're having to deal with the physical limitations of time and space, and we don't have those limitations on thought when we're dealing in our inner mind space. So if we think about thought, though, it's an abstract object or an idea. It's a wave that's caused by energy moving through the field of mind space. So you can think of mind space. The best thing you can do, I have found, is think of it as being like air. That you're literally moving through that space. Your thought is moving through that space. So then if thought is an agitation of the mind field, of mind space, then what is the absence of thought? What do you experience when there is no thought?
Quiet.
Right. So what you're experiencing is the mind space without any interference, right? So it's perfectly calm. And in the Rajyoga Sutras, that space is called the self resting in its essential nature. So how do we know that spirit is most at peace? How is it that we can find spirit or a deeper spiritual connection when we're at peace, when the mind is quiet?
We're not interpreting all this and filtering things through the ego. Everything's just, you're accepting and peaceful in that one spot of just knowingness.
Very good. And what is the state of the mind, the substance of the mind at that point in time?
It's a flat line.
It's still. It's there is no. It's like this is when I've used the attribute of the calmness on the surface of the lake. It's perfectly calm. There's no vibration going through it, right? So one of the things that ancient yogis understood was that when the mind is not experiencing thought. It is in it's experiencing mind in its essential nature. In its essential nature, it is a manifestation of the self with a capital S. Interesting, huh? So what we know is, why does meditation and concentration, single focusing the mind, lead us into a spiritual state of super consciousness? Anybody want to?
Limiting the waves.
You what?
You're limiting the waves until there are no waves.
Very good. Really, literally, that is what you're doing. And that's why we meditate. That's why meditation gets us to the point where once we have no thought, all of a sudden, at that moment when we cease to have a thought, we go super conscious. Okay? So I guess part of what I want you to experience today, and I don't know if a lot of times we talk about, thought meditation, but here we're really talking about, why is concentration and a single thought what's the difference between a single thought and a no thought? It's a big deal. It's really a big deal. It's the difference between night and day, because you have a single agitating thought or wave going through your mind self. You are not at peace with the divine essence within yourself, right? Now, what happens? So, what we enter into at this point in time is what we call lower super consciousness. So, what's happened in that lower super consciousness, we know we've entered that because we experience light in our mind space. How many of you have experienced light in your mind space?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
have. Yeah. Yeah. And so once we see the light, where is that light coming from?
Oh, yeah. It's like,
It's coming from Anya.
yeah.
Yeah, it's coming from the self. So here again, we know why the self, with the capital S, is referred to as light. Because we can experience it through concentration and through meditation. We can get into this super conscious state. So what is the purpose then of a mantra? Based on what we were just talking about.
Well, like the Om
Sure.
would be like just that repetition. Well, it'll zone you out.
Why does it zone you out?
As you do have to focus, and you have to, like, you're learning how to hear the vibrations of Om, even when you're not saying it, if you're just saying it in your mind. And,
Right,
and
so
then
Are
it's a
you
single focus. Yeah.
right? So you're going from a similar thought to a similar thought to a similar thought to a similar thought, which gets you to a single thought, which will then take you to no thought. So that's why a mantra works. Is where we want to get to, is that place of no thought, that there's no disturbance in the mind, because that's when we've entered what we call lower super consciousness. Okay, so what do you think candle stare does?
Oh, that'll get you there.
Why does it space us out? Can you explain? Can you think about it in terms of what we're talking about here?
You're focusing on light for one thing.
Right. And so you're drawing that light in through Brahmadya, the meeting point between inner and outer world, right? So as soon as you go into Brahmadya, what happens to your awareness of your physical world?
drops
Intimate.
away.
it drops away, and we call that pratyahara, right? So if that's a whole lot of information and brain and agitation on the surface of the mind that goes away if you just eliminated it, right? And so the deeper you go, so when you go, we are embedding that object of light onto the movie screen of the mind, right? So let's, oh, no, sorry. Let me go, I got to go this way again. Here we go. So here, now we're going to talk about, then this is a really graphic explanation of the mind, but it gets the point across. Okay, so you're at Brumadya. We could say that that's probably right here where the little pointer is. So there's an object out here. So when you focus on that candle flame, your awareness is coming out from Anya, that purple center blob. It's going out, it's enveloping the object, right? And then it's bringing that back through Brumadya, and it's implanting it on the movie screen of the mind, right? So it's establishing itself as a single point of focus in your mind space, right? So if you have a single point of focus on the mind space, you're just one step away from super consciousness, aren't you? So who's doing the looking at who's doing the looking at the movie on the movie screen of the mind? Where is that awareness coming from?
The self.
Yes, from the self.
The self.
Right. So you're experiencing the self as awareness, knowingness. So here again, this is why the ancients established this awareness of inner knowingness, because it's doing the looking, it's doing the seeing of what's showing up on the movie screen of the mind. How's that for mind blowing? Does that blow your mind? That blew my mind when I was like, holy crap, this is just amazing that this is really what's going on. So we often think of the self as from a spiritual standpoint, but here we're looking at thought moving through the medium called the mind, and the ability to be aware as pure consciousness itself that's looking back onto the movie screen of the mind. So I begin to recognize that I am the seer, I am the witnesser, right? So the seer, it witnesses, it's aware of, and who puts meaning? What puts meaning on that which is perceived, the object, on the thought?
Your conditioning.
Huh?
Your conditioning.
Very good. Yes, your conditioning. So that's where the ego, the little self, comes in, because it's what categorizes what the thought is or what it is that what's appearing before you. Okay. So we can see the importance of how ego, the ability to access ego, is vitally important to our understanding of the outer world and even what's going on in the inner world. But when I want to really just experience the divine essence itself, I have to move past this ego, don't I? And so when I'm in the subconscious, or I'm having dreams, because all our dreams and stuff are coming up related to our conditioning. So dreams are appearing as thoughts that are projected onto the movie screen of the mind. And the symbolism of the dream is all picked up, and the divine essence within you, the self within you, picks from this repertoire of what your ego, how it sees things, and it puts them together in interesting ways and then projects that narrative onto the movie screen of the mind. And you go, I just had a dream, right? So when we're doing dream analysis, what we are doing is we're deciphering what the images and the symbolism that's coming from your ego and your conditioned self, so we can get to the root message that's coming from the divine essence within you about what's going on in the objects in your outer world. Does that make sense? Is that making sense to you? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, because I know some of this stuff gets a little bit. We're kind of going through all kinds of strange things. So one of the things that we know is I'm going to go next to staying in tune with. This is another manual that's published on Patreon called "Staying in Tune with the Self." And in this, one of the things that we look at is how do we understand how we exist? We exist as the external world. We know we have the physical body and we have five senses. And what we experience is matter, energy, forces, time, and space. That's basically what makes up our outer world. And we have the five senses that pick up on all that information. And I probably didn't do that correctly. Okay, so this is a model for how do we understand our existence. So matter and energy and forces, time and space, how do we experience them?
Oh, through our physical body.
Right, through our physical body, yes. And our physical body has five senses that pick this information up. Okay, and then it is brought in through Brumadya, and it enters into the internal world. Okay, so in our internal world, then we run into five subtle senses, right? And we know those are there because we have a sensing about, hearing, sight, subtle touch, subtle sense of smell, all of those. We have all of those. But what we recognize is where I'm functioning now is in the mental body. So I've moved to a different plane of reality. And we know that that exists because that's where thoughts happen. And we call that either subtle or astral. So this is where we're dealing with the mental part of ourselves, right? And so I think of this as being that medium of the mind. Okay, so everything that we can experience of the mind are thoughts. And so those thoughts, they can happen on two different levels. They can happen either subconsciously or unconsciously. And we call those thoughts mind chatter or chitta, right? Or I could get to the frontal lobes of the brain. I could actually do some thinking, which means I could generate some thought in the frontal lobes of the brain. So what I'm doing is using my intellect. Okay, so that's different. And memory is coming from recorded sensations or thought waves from previous times, right? So that's our conditioning, right? And we can experience intellect when where do we have a brand new thought? It happens in our intellectual part of our mind. And that's what we call an aha moment. Because it's a thought that your mind doesn't know where to categorize it because you've never had the thought before. Have you ever tried to learn something, it just isn't making sense, and then all of a sudden you get it and you go, oh, now what do you say? Now I see it, right? Now I see it. And so where are you seeing it? You're seeing it in the mind. You're seeing it in that substance that we call the mind field. And dreams that are revealing as we begin to peel back the illusion or the symbolism of the dream. It's what is it doing? It's revealing the effect that our past thoughts and memories have had on how we're seeing the world, right? So how do you change your thoughts? You can either do it based on a memory or something from your past, or you could get to a quiet mind and allow intuition to cause a frequency of a thought wave to go through your mind that is intuitive, right? So where's the source of intuition coming from in the mind field? It's not coming from you.
The cosmic mind.
Yeah, it's coming from the cosmic mind, and the cosmic mind, we can relate that to the self, right? So now we begin to see that I can either generate thought, or the self, the divine essence within me, can generate thought and push it through the mind, right? I could also have, so when you're having an intuitive thought, where is the source of that thought coming from?
The self.
Right. So that little purple dot in the middle, right? And it's projecting it where? Onto the movie screen of the mind, right?
Yep.
And then your awareness is perceiving the thought. And if you've meditated before, your conditioned self comes in and says, oh, I recognize this. I've enjoyed this thought before, right? So the ego at this point in time is the part of the memory bank and the symbol system. So it isn't based on it doesn't have the ignorance that it had before you learned to meditate, because you've disassociated many of your memories from your past experiences, because you're not repeating doing similar behavior that you did that caused you to hang on to ignorance in the past. So when we say that I've changed my mind, what have I actually done?
Release some of your memories that controlled what you were doing.
Yes. So the more I do that, and that's the surrendering, the more I let go of those and I don't let them to be active in my mind field, my mental state during the day, I'm going to have less agitation in my mind field, right? My mental, that essence of my mind. And so because my mind is more calm, I am going to be more relaxed. I'm going to, how is that quiet mind going to affect my emotional body? Because it's made up of feelings and memories. So if my mind's calmer, what's going to happen to my emotional self?
Oh, be balanced.
Yeah, it's going to be calm, right? And then what if it's calm, how easily is it for life force to move through the Nadi system, the distribution system for the cosmic life force?
Oh yeah, free flowing.
Real flowing, right? There's no interference coming from thought in the mind field. So that's not affecting our physical state of being. So what do you think Yoga Nidra does based on the way we're talking about things? I think all of you have been through Yoga Nidra.
It's a release. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like this weight, even like there's substance to it.
You
Yeah.
release the attachment to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but you can see what we actually do is your subconscious mind is no longer emitting agitating sound waves, energy into the mind field. Those eventually disappear, right? So you cease to remember those thoughts, and you cease to have the emotional ramifications on your physical body and your state of beingness because you're no longer attached to those thoughts which have caused agitation, right? So what do you think happens to the when you're in some sort of a trauma? So the trauma, well, let's say if it's a physical trauma, let's like you're in a car accident or something where you're physically traumatized. What do you think that does to the mind field?
It agitates it, and it's lasting because, say, you've got a broken arm. Every time you move your arm, you're putting a new memory in of,
Right. Right. So you're absolutely correct. So the more, if the experience we're having is coming from the outer world, it's the densest experience that we have of ourselves. And because it's been injured, it means all five physical senses, every aspect of the body is saying trauma, 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 right? Stress, stress. And that's why the physical body goes into shock. I'm sure you've all been in shock, and you'll notice you feel the shock. You can feel a disassociation between your mental self and what's going on in the physical body, right? So why do you think the mind's doing that? Why does the mind separate at that point in time?
so you don't blow the circuits.
Probably. And what if you're in a war zone, or if it's you're in a difficult experience, but it lasts for hours? Then you can see how the agitation in the space of the mind becomes that agitation becomes the dominant state of being, doesn't it? And so it takes a lot to be able to calm down our thoughts, our emotions, our energetic body, because all of that information is being stored in the causal body as the soul. It's the record of our experience. So we have, when the mind gets agitated, just like when you type in something on the computer, it gets recorded and it's still in there and if you had a negative emotional response to that experience, then there's a negative feeling that resonates every time you bring that memory up. So to release that memory is vitally important to cleaning out the mind. And there's where our work we can do two things. I can work on the karma that I came in with, so I can work on changing that. I can be actively being aware of how I'm thinking and acting in the moment. And I can be very aware of what I'm creating right now. So those are the three types of karma that are going on simultaneously. And for most of us, we have so much going on in our lives right now. We don't really spend a lot of time thinking about I wonder what karma I'm creating for myself right now. But if I am meditating and I'm going to that place where I'm calming the medium called the mind, I'm calming it down and going into a place of no thought over and over and over again on a conscious level. What I'm doing is, when it's the mind is calm, that's when I experience what we call the bliss body or the spirit within. So it's the connection to the cosmic mind. It takes us to the source of awareness. It takes us to the source of the higher principles. And it takes us to the source of joy, the transcendent state. And that's the state that heals. That's what it's all about. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of how I put it together in my own mind after all these years of reading all this different stuff. It's like, how in the hell is this all related back to itself? And you begin to realize, thought is such a simple thing, but it's profound. We begin to understand the why is thought profound. So
That's what I was gonna ask you, like, because if thought is just energy, why do you think it seems to be so much more powerful than other energies around us? Like it can, I don't know, it can control you or it can cause anxiety. It just seems to be so much powerful, even though it's just, I mean, it's got to be a tiny wave.
not necessarily. The waves are of different amplitude. I don't know if you've studied waves.
Yeah.
Yeah, an amplitude. And so we know the more, it's like if you turn up the volume. So who would turn up the volume and make the thought have more energy? What part of you could do that?
Ego. Yeah.
The ego could do it, right? And so that's how ego, in fact, when it makes it the main thing on the stage that your mind's perceiving. So how do you get the mind to turn the volume down on that? How do you turn the volume down on a thought that you don't want to be manifesting all the time?
Focus on something else.
Write something dissimilar, right? And keep focusing on something dissimilar, right? So there's a technique that I teach people after you've had your yoga nidra and you're retraining yourself how to have more control over your mind. And there's 4 steps to it. The first one is recognize that you're having a thought. Second awareness is, I don't know why it showed up and it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to analyze it because I'm not going to give it any more energy, right? Because that would amplify it and I'm wanting it to diminish. Third is I focus on a thought that I do want to think about, right? So I've changed to a dissimilar thought and then I go into action on that thought. So the action means that I had to figure out what I could do in the physical reality that would be activated on all levels so that the similar thought, that new thought that I have, overpowers the thought that I was thinking about. So those are the 4 steps, right? And if that's all you need to do, because what happens is, where does a thought get energy from? Awareness. So as awareness focuses in on the similar thought, the wave gets bigger and bigger. And then if it's an emotional thought, it goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. If it goes bipolar, it splits. You got double whammies going on, right? If you go manic, it keeps going up, 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 up. If you go depressed, it goes down, 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 down. What's anxiety? Anxiety is focusing on what if, goes into imagination. So what does imagination do to your mind?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It
Lies.
right, and imagination can be really, really good if it's harnessed. But if it's not harnessed, it goes into anxiety, it goes into fear, right? So one of the things we're taught in Rajyoga Sutra is that we have to gain control over our imagination, right? Because it can screw you up. imagination. Think about what does imagination do? Let's think of it in terms. How would an imaginative thought function in the medium called the mind, this fluid that we're thinking about?
Same as can't our bodies can't distinguish between reality and perceived, like imagination?
Right. It can't. And we have to have something happen that will cause it to become that we realize it's real.
Like if you imagine fear and you experience fear, like the body has the same response, right?
Yes, it does. And why is that? Because where does fear exist? In the field called the mind. So let's say somebody came up from behind you and scared you. Now every single part of you is going to have a response, right? Every part of you is going to have a mind is going to be. What do you think your mind space is going to look like? It's going to have a lot of thought waves going through it. It's going to be extremely agitated, right? And the body will even give off adrenaline, right? Because the body's going to have electrical and chemical reaction to the experience, right? So what happens when you're just having a thought, like there's a boogeyman, that you're afraid of the dark? It's in the mind, but the more you focus on it, what happens to the amplitude of the wave?
It gets bigger.
Yeah. And it can cause the same level of agitation as the actual physical event.
And it's exhausting because I know at least a couple of times when I've been in extreme fear, I just had to give it up because I was exhausted. It was exhausting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But the reason mental work is exhausting is because thought is energy, right? And we have to rest in order to rejuvenate once we've used up energy, right? And a lot of people don't think of mental things as, being using up energy. Oh, you're sitting at a desk all day. Don't think that that's not exhausting. So they've proven that the mind needs it needs a couple of things in order to maintain concentration. It needs energy, so it gets its fuel. A lot of its fuel comes through fat, right? They know that Einstein's brain had 7 times the number of fat cells in it than the normal person.
Wow.
So we know that thought, that when the brain's thinking, that it's using fat. So a lot of times when like if you're going to have something where you have to really do a lot of thinking, it's a good time to have some fat before you go. Like bacon in the morning is probably really good for the brain, right? Because you're giving yourself the fats that it needs in order to do the functioning. So if they're not, if imagination, if so let's talk about imagination. It's in the mind field. So how is the mind field connected to the chakras?
Oh, definitely.
Oh yeah, definitely. Right.
Well, because even like I know thought and memory are two. I mean, thought will be converted to memory eventually, right? And so even like we have these memories in our chakra system.
Yes, we do.
I know. And even having a present thought will trigger certain chakras. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and if you've experienced that, it's like you see somebody that you love, all of a sudden you can feel your heart chakra open up. For me, just go by, have an 18-wheeler drive by and my muladhara goes off.
Oh,
I can just feel it tighten up and that energy of fear just shoot up and I know it's not logical. I mean, but there was a part of me that I remember that after I had my car accident, I was only going 35 miles an hour and the guy wasn't going fast that hit me. But I remember the G force that was so powerful. And my body's never forgotten how powerful G force is at 45, 35 miles an hour, let alone 70. So like having that knowledge is sometimes it's not so good. I probably did better when I couldn't remember that. What about when you've had something really traumatic happen from your past, and you finally get to the point through meditation where you've released it enough that you forgot to remember it, like you're not even having the emotional response to it anymore, right? Because
oh, that's a beauty.
isn't that a
I
beauty?
want that.
Oh, yeah. And eventually that can happen and you can get to a place. How do you think you get to the point where that memory, that when that wave is going through the medium of your mind, that it's dissipated so much that there's no energy anymore to trigger your chakra system?
That's daily practice.
That's daily practice. Yes, that's daily practice. That could also mean that you wanted to work on a particular chakra for a period of time, because that means you're going to be doing what to the mind field. If you're doing a repeated practice over and over again, what's the benefit of that?
Oh, it speeds up the process.
Why? Why?
Well, that focus, it's intense, almost like a laser beam, right?
That's right.
And thoughts also have mass, don't they?
They feel like it. Some of them have weight.
Yeah.
And so what puts the weight on those thoughts is the emotional self.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You think about your mom, that there's so many thoughts about your mom that it's the conglomeration of all those thoughts that feel dense and that has weight to it, right? What if what somebody you met and had, that you saw in the grocery store yesterday, there's no weight to it, right? So you don't hang on to it. So it doesn't cause a lot of agitation. There's not a lot of amplitude to the wave that's going through the mind field, right? So this is just a really wonderful way, I think, to look at thought, so that you've got something that's got a little more. These are abstract thoughts, and sometimes when we can give them some appearance, some graphics appearance, it's easier for us to understand, what it is that's actually going on. Because it feels like it, like if what happens when I've meditated and I've gone into bliss, or I feel joy.
Lightness of being.
Right. But you'll notice you come out of it and you have no thought, right? When you come out of meditation, you're not thinking about anything, right? You forgot to remember. I used to have a t-shirt that said, of all the things I've lost in life, I miss my mind the least. And people used to think I was nuts. Like, what do you want to lose your mind for? But at the highest level of awareness that we experience in our movement in spiritual evolution towards cosmic consciousness, the last thing that you will lose, it's called asam prajnana samadhi, is the mind. So you'll let go of the mind and go into the bliss, have the experience, and you might stay there for a while. And then it'll close back down, right? And we'll come back down to the other levels of awareness of ourselves. I gotta let this cat out.
Oh, is that your cat?
No, it's not my cat, it's Yarl's cat.
So cute.
Oh, Miles is a big fluffy Siberian cat. He's quite the talker. He lets you know, but he likes all the animals like to be up here. They're all up here when I'm recording and talking. They like this stuff. They always have. You look at some of my old tapes. I know when we had class at Sydney's house, we could hear her
Frankie.
her
Yeah.
cockatiel singing away. When in my really early work, you could hear my cockatiel singing. You can hear the dogs barking. I mean, the animals really respond. So let's talk. I'm going to switch. I am recording this just as a sound file too. We'll have it. So based on this, have you guys got any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I was just wondering, oh, bless you, or whatever.
Thank you.
Okay. When you're going through a moment of like you don't like someone's behavior or just a person in general, and those negative thoughts, one of the things that I have done, which maybe it is imagination, but putting that sheath around me so I keep my thoughts to myself. Is that silly? Or the thought of hurting someone, because I think the general public feels like this is just contained, right?
They do.
But we affect one another even through our thoughts.
Right.
And so, I mean, when you're going through a negative situation, probably meditation would in that moment, but maybe you're grocery shopping or something. I don't know. What do you do to try to contain that in and change, maybe just change your focus, I guess. The amplitude.
Well, if you're feeling yourself having a reaction,
yeah,
right? From what level is the reaction coming?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the first thing.
Well, okay, my specific example, I went to my high school reunion, even though I told my friend I really didn't want to. It was nice to see my friends individually. I had two that I had kept in contact, and we had a lunch, or they came to my house and visited and stuff. But I went for an hour, and yeah, there was just this moment where I was like, my only recourse was, oh, I gotta pick up the kids from the swimming pool. I gotta go, like it just seemed like it was too much. But I almost feel like any kind of situation similar to that, I would want to prepare myself because of the conditioning, the thoughts, they're powerful because they happened so long ago, I think, and then they rear their ugly head.
Well, and
you think
it's tapping your whole beingness in to all the feelings, and it's basically opening up Pandora's box.
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah. Every 10 years.
Yeah, it's like, geez.
Oh,
I never went to a school reunion.
And some people dealt with it by drinking lots of beer. Which I don't know if, yeah.
So no, I think you have a really good point. If you find yourself having to go into that situation, I think setting up a physical boundary, like we have our aura field. Okay. So all of our minds are linked together, right? But I can isolate my mind, right? By setting up a barrier. Like my energy is only going out 2 feet off of me, and I'm seeing myself inside of a bubble, right? Nothing is going to penetrate that bubble. right? And so that would be how I would protect myself in a situation like that.
Yeah. And
And then
like,
move and keep that, just set that image up, because when you set the image up in your mind, like a visual, like you visualize yourself, that becomes the reality that's happening on the mind field. And people have a tendency to think that this isn't real, but it is real. And science is going to eventually get to the point where there's a reason why we have the capacity to display, like like how do I say this? If I want to be a, a great person, I want to be a great mother, I'm going to pick certain symbols, because our mind is set up in archetypes, right? Those are those basic dynamic energy, how do I say them? They're almost like categories about the way the human mind interprets and relates to life. So, and I know I've always worked with just 7 of them. Just we know the self is one. There's the male and the female. There's linear time, cyclic time, and then there's the hero and the adversary. So when you feel you're in an adversarial situation, and that's what's coming at you, the opposite of you, so you activate the opposite. So the opposite is the hero. So you become the hero of yourself. So when you think of a hero, can you feel what's happening to your energy? Do you see how it comes up and it spreads out? Right? So
yeah.
the barrier that you're setting up is not just out here, it's all centering right off the spinal column, off the chakras, and you're radiating out a frequency of strength, and nothing is going to penetrate this. That's literally how it happens.
I love that. I'm definitely using that to my advantage, because there's still those certain situations where maybe down the road the kids are also going to be in a event or a banquet, award ceremony, and then I will have to deal with
Right.
who, and and so just keeping that, so I'm keeping in accordance with spiritual beliefs of nonviolence even.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, because my whole body was shaking
I bet.
when
Yeah.
that
Well,
first time that
because
she was in the same room.
because
Yeah.
you can feel the vibration, and it's moving through the mind. The mind is literally a plane of reality. We can't see it, but it's everywhere.
And I take that for granted.
Well, that's why I'm trying to get you to we can actually work with the physical laws that we know about the universe. And if we apply them to our spiritual study, to me, it makes perfect sense. It's like, where is the source of your divine essence is coming from your spine. That's the Sushumna, that's the spinal column. And the chakras they resonate and transmit information off the spine, so they pick up information. So you were picking up those lower frequencies, and so when you're in a dangerous situation, or a situation where someone's not being kind, where they're being violent towards you, you're going to pick that up in Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, and you're gonna feel afraid. It's gonna trigger you to feel afraid, right? Because you are feeling the adversary. So you feel the adversary, that's the signal to go to the opposite archetype, go to the hero, and you focus on yourself as the hero. Sometimes I call it, I love that Xena warrior
yes.
princess. Yeah. Yes. I am a warrior princess. And I remember because I remember when I started to get in touch with that part of myself because I used to believe back in my late teens that nonviolence meant to be passive
Yeah. And
and
that's
to
not true.
be weak all the time. And once I once I found out that that set me up to be beat up and to be hurt and harmed and people doing things to me that I don't like, I got pissed off. And the next thing I know, I start feeling this strength coming up from Muladhara, the lower chakras. And all of a sudden, I heard the words, "No, I'm not doing this," coming out of my mouth. And so what I found is these people backed away from me because I realized I was shooting out this energy. My mind field was on fire. It was hot. They didn't want to touch it, right? So
Yeah.
I know when that guy was beating me up and he'd gotten the big knife and he was going to stab me and kill me. And it's the weirdest thing. I was on the couch, curled up, trying to protect inner my my inner organs. And then all of a sudden time stopped. So I went into a transcendent state and I heard the voice. It said, "What do you want? What do you want?" And I said, "I want to live long enough to see my children raised." And all of a sudden, this force field came off of me, and he couldn't come near me. There was a force field, and I got up off the couch, and I was able to run out of my house. But I was like, holy! I mean, yes, it's a scary experience, but I'm going, holy shit! I just experienced spirit flowing through my body and making me be safe where I could have been killed. And then I was like, and that's you have those experiences and you start thinking about, okay, what really happened there? I got inner guidance. I said what it was that I wanted. So I made up my mind what I wanted, right? I didn't say keep me safe in this moment. My kids were 6 and 8 at the time. I was like, no, I want to stick around till they're grown, right? So I was like guaranteeing myself planet. And then when it was time for them, they were graduating, I had another baby. So I always had to kind of laugh about that. I thought, oh, see, I had to have another kid to keep the
Keep the thing going. Yeah.
going, that spirit's gonna protect me because I'm always gonna have kids around that need me. And so I always thought that was kind of a funny way to look at it. But I do think spirit has a sense of humor. But I remember one day, I know Sid and she had some people she needed to move out of a house that she had. And she couldn't figure out how to get him to move out. So, I came over and we were having tea and I was thinking about it. And I said, well, how about we fill the house up with concrete? And so that's what we did.
And it worked.
And it worked. They left.
It did work.
It was harmless. Nobody was hurt. But they realized because we filled the space up with our mind, we filled that space up and made it so dense that they couldn't exist in it, right? So it's interesting, again, in the Rajyoga Sutras, because that's the book that teaches us, I think, the main focus is on the mind and how we can use the mind from the yogic standpoint. And what we begin to understand that depending on where I put my mind will determine which characteristics I am exuding. Okay, so if I'm stuck, what would be an image that would come forth that would reflect? What would be an image of how I could see myself if I was stuck somewhere? Couldn't, like, I was stuck in a situation like you were, around all these people you didn't want to be around.
Wings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and picture yourself getting up and flying out of there, right? One of my favorites is the flying carpet,
Ooh.
and that's an old Sufi symbol.
Ooh.
Sufis use symbology and sound of words also as a way to change the frequency in which they are living. Okay, so what we begin to understand is, like, if I say baraka, 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 that's the Sufi word for spiritual power.
Ooh.
And I love it that Osama, Barack Obama, right? Barack, there's spiritual power in that kid. His mom knew what she was doing. Picking that name. But when we call of it, what are we doing when Christians say amen? Amen. Can you feel the vibration of that? See, so it's an agreement, it's a calmingness, isn't it? It's a calming. What about a lot of people when they pray, we ask such and such in the name of Jesus. What's the vibration you pick up off of Jesus?
Kindness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, unification.
Watching over.
Watching over.
Which isn't, that's the Western philosophy.
Right, but the symbol of Jesus is that he's the vehicle through which people get into that peaceful place with God. So for them, for a Christian, they use that symbolism to get their energy field to go into a place of peace and trust. So the symbols are really, really important because they're affecting how our mind is relating to the world. Like, if I'm walking into a situation that I know I need to be strong and I need to be unaffected by what's going on, so I need really thick, thin, that's when I become Xeno warrior princess.
Yeah.
And you'll notice, why do little children love the superheroes? Why do they love them? Because they have so little control over anything in their life that they need to believe. When they believe in that superhero, they're tapping into the super conscious awareness of themselves, that divine essence of themselves that they had from the time they were conceived till the time that they started to lose, to feel that feeling of vulnerability after birth. When you're in the birth canal, or when you're in the womb, you don't have to worry about things, right? You have consciousness. You're going to have consciousness, but you don't have to worry about things. So what is the state of your consciousness? It's going to be the closest thing that you can get to just being that quiet, peaceful mind field, right? So you would become aware of yourself, right? Because babies in the womb can suck their thumb, right? Self-comfort. They respond to music that they hear, vibration, right? So we know that they're sentient beings, but then they go through birth, which is traumatic. And now what do they notice? That they have to complain in order to get their needs met. They have to make a fuss, right? So here we see the birth of the ego. Complaining's the first one we learn, right? And then we learn what's number 2.
Pleasing.
No,
No.
pick up for myself first.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I gotta,
That's right.
I am my own person. I am my own person, right? And then the parents, they put up with that for a while and they say, enough of that crap. You need to please me, right? And so now they have to teach, the child has to learn, oh, now I have to please other people, right? And then we send them off to school, and now you not only have to please mom and dad, you got to please authority figures like teachers and policemen and all of that. And then you run into people telling you there's something wrong with yourself. So now you start feeling like you need to start figuring out how to improve yourself because you can't be okay. But that still isn't working. So you look for somebody else to blame. So now you have the 6 ego decisions, right? And those are pouring in all the memories, and you're building all of your symbol system, right? That your dream ego is going to use to help you understand yourself, right? And hope to God one day you're going to decide you just want some peace and quiet, right? That the world's a little crazy out there, so you decide to go for a walk, or you decide to lie down on the grass and look up at the clouds, and things start to get kind of quiet, and all of a sudden you go, wow, I'm starting to feel better, right? So then you start to become aware that maybe there's something else going on here on the planet. So then you start watching your breath and start doing a little meditating, and you're going, oh man, this feels so good. This is getting me into a place where I'm being aware of my mind and the world I live in, but it's not crazy. It's peaceful and I can affect it, right? I have some control over it, right? So I start doing the practices, and I get really good at it. And pretty soon I can just, I can think myself into a peaceful place because I know how to focus the mind and concentrate. I can slip into that super conscious state, and there I am, right? I've moved into that state of oneness with everything that is, and I'm at peace. Nothing's bugging me. Body's feeling good. Let's say I've had a few injuries along the way. Well, yeah, those happen. So how do I get better? Well, I'm just going to do the same thing I did with getting rid of all the negative stuff that was going on from my past. And I'm going to get myself really clear about who it is I really am and where I'm at. And gosh, you know what's going to happen is I'm going to forget that I have rheumatoid arthritis, or I'm going to forget that I have chemical imbalances, and I'm going to forget those because I'm not hanging on to those experiences. I'm not saying this is who I am. I am saying I am that which is, right? Now we're getting to those great utterances. The great utterances, I am that which is, right? All that is, I am. So now we're to those profound few words that when I say them resonate with the stillness of the mind field. And I have awareness, and I am that peace in that mindset. And that is who I am. The rest of it is just those are merely reactions to experiences I had along the way, but they are not who my essence is. And all of a sudden, you find yourself living in a super conscious mindset. You need a new job, you need a new place to be. Think about what it is that you want. Think about it, see it, visualize it, right? Look at the world around you. What are you manifesting for yourself? Because what's going on around you is manifesting what's going on up here with your mind. Right. So, what are you doing with how's your world, Miss Celestina?
Oh, well, and my recent one.
Yeah, what have
I'm
you learned recently? That's new behavior.
it all starts with a single thought. It really does. And I was just thinking intention. You know, it's like thought with direction and power. And really, yeah, that surge then it changes everything.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. And then I was able to fulfill a role that was needed that I had not that much experience in.
That's right.
And yes, thank you.
Yes.
So, but it was, and then it was the continual thought. My symbols were, I'm the daughter of a Marine Corps. I'm the daughter of a very loving, beautiful woman.
Yeah.
I can do both.
I can do
So,
both.
I can do both, and I did, and it just so interesting how she could look into my eyes, and she knew.
You
And
bet.
she tried to test it.
Yeah.
My daughter, who was like suffering from teenage tantrum
Right.
times 10, and she knew, and I mean, thank God for all of us.
Yeah.
And then I had to turn around, and I kept the voice, because the voice, I felt like the thought would project into the voice.
Yes.
And then Zane, a totally different human being, who I was letting him get away with so much. And he needed, so I didn't realize, like, you know how little you are doing around the house to help me
Right.
and contribute. And so I had to approach it differently.
Right.
And yet it was the same intention.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was my reason.
Right.
And then it devolved to the high school reunion. But I think I had to, you know, like through this, it was so nice, you know, just seeing people as human in a very big mind
Yeah.
cloud,
Yeah.
and everybody just trying their best with what they have. So,
Everybody's
you know, that's what I walked away from it. But I was glad to walk away still.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
You're
didn't
right.
make me want to stay. But yeah, working with one human at a time
Yeah.
has been my lesson, and I love them so deeply. They're my life's work too, in a way.
Yeah.
And because I'm learning so much about myself, you know, and the self. So yeah, it was a kind of like, oh, what Katie was saying, I got hit by the 2x4, because I was like, yeah, you got to do something now, or else I was going to lose her.
Yeah.
I really was.
Yep.
My daughter was going down a path that was scary.
Right.
So, and I'll continue to have to maintain that energy sometimes, you know, at least.
Well, you can pull it up.
Yeah, like, but I mean, I think in the mornings, it's like I need to do like, you know, do a
Warrior
symbol
pose.
of yoga, my warrior
Warrior
pose.
pros. Get ready for it.
Like to
Yes.
remind myself that is where I need to be, like, wake up,
Yeah.
wake up. Yeah, so.
You do a few little kicks and arm.
Maybe some Xena. I need to watch some of
Well,
that.
because that movement gets
Oh,
you in the right
yeah.
mindset.
Yeah.
And
And like,
war.
well, and I'm battling ignorance.
Yes, you are.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm battling. And I think she knew that. She knows I love her, and she knows that.
Oh yeah, this has nothing to do with love.
Well, yeah, that's true.
This is about love.
This is nipping some shit in the bud. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is about boundaries, respect.
Yeah. But it was an important moment and stuff. So.
How are you using your mind right now, Sydney?
To keep getting healthier.
Okay, is it working?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Better,
it is.
huh?
Yep. Knees are better. Hands are better.
Yeah. Not having to two-step the steps, are you?
Nope.
Just one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
Yep. You even got on your knees again.
Oh
And I
my
did
God.
too.
Yeah.
So yay.
Yay.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yay.
The power of the mind. How about you, Megan? What have you been doing with your mind? What you have a thought to do?
Yeah, I wanted to move closer to friends and family, and I worked with intentions. Like I wanted my move to go smoothly. And the day we were moving, I mean, it was, Salt Lake City, it was during the heat wave. And I mean, there are never clouds there. And that morning it was overcast and we got it done in like 2.5 hours.
Great.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you're just on vacation.
Yep.
Yep.
I can have a little vacation mode before I have to, direly find work or something,
I
so
take
it's
that
nice.
word direly out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't have that feeling of like,
Okay.
oh, I have to get work, I have to
Okay,
get a
so
job
that-
right now.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're going from moving to having fun to
Yes.
doing your job.
Yes.
Right. Right. Yeah. Isn't that nice to not have to deal with? Is that new for you to move that?
Yeah. I took a break between I've been working at jobs like about 5 years, and I had taken a break between the last two jobs. And at first it was fun. I was doing like vacation-y type things. And then it did get to that fear. I mean, it's real. It comes up and like, I need insurance and I need benefits and I need money.
Money's good.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, I mean, not be like unrealistic, like, oh, I can just do this forever, but.
Right. But
Yeah.
in the moment, in the now, you're enjoying. Yeah. Enjoying. That's good. What about you, Katie?
I guess everybody knows I just retired not too long ago. I'm kind of slowing everything down to almost stop
Okay.
because I've got a lot of healing to do on my body. And so there's some physical things. I made some bad, not major decisions, but some bad minor decisions. So I'm actually, my mind is mostly I'm trying to get a focus on, I'm just releasing stuff and changing, and I'm just kind of out there in a space. I really don't know where I'm at. Pretty much.
Are you feel like you're cleaning up after?
Yes, I feel,
Like
yes,
you're
like
really
I'm bothered.
tired and needing to can't get too focused.
No.
Don't have the energy to get focused.
And don't care to. And if I do make decisions, they're minor, but they're not smart ones, for the most part. It's
Right.
like, okay, I'll just go through. Yes, I feel like I'm cleansing. Things are dropping away.
Right. And that is sometimes that happens, and there is a time where we're not meant to be able to affect things, right? We're other things take over. I went through an interesting purge on a few weeks ago, and it was a whole body, mind kind of thing. But my blood pressure came down 20 points, and my heart rate dropped 10. And the level of peacefulness that I had within myself, it was an old issue, dealing with grandchildren and not being able to see them. And I think my body actually released, because I've been able to see them every week for the last few weeks. And I think the sorrow that I felt that was related to not being able to see him for 18 months, that my body and my mind dropped it. That unhappiness that was locked in with those memories got dropped.
Wow.
I mean, and it had a profound effect on my heart rate. I went down in the 50s. My blood pressure's down in the 130s, So, I mean, that's when you know, wow. And when it was happening, it took 24 hours. I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but my sewer backed up in my house too. So I had that symbol in my outer world at the same time. So, that's what's so interesting. Are you finding a hard time, Katie, finding where to put things? Like, like get things organized into the new pattern? Because you're
I don't know where anything's at.
right. That's what I was
Yes,
going to say. We get
I have no idea of anything. I'm just in a place of, I'm just writing it because that's all I can do.
right. So this is what happens to us when your thoughts are going from dissimilar to dissimilar. There's no sense of order that's happening. And we can get into mindsets where this happens. And part of it, are you resting because you don't have an intention?
I am resting, yeah.
Yes. Because sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but if I have an intention, that seems some part of my mind gets in gear. So it's like, okay, things are lining up. And so sometimes for things not to line up and just be in a dissimilar place where I feel like I'm not doing anything is actually when there's some reorganization happening, maybe on the physical level, so I can really sleep because my mind's not engaging into the next project, like what's coming now. So it's being in the state that she's in is a natural state because it's a state that we call randomness, which is how we started our talk today, was about random talk. Right. So when the mind goes into randomness, which is the chaos theory that says the underlying natural state of the universe is everything is dissimilar, right? There is no organization. That's what we call zero or flat line, right? There's nothing, there's no structure at all, right? So what we find is through meditation and our spiritual work, that gives us the framework, right? To build the order and to work with our body and our mind and to learn how to direct the spiritual energy by the way that we think and the way that we move and how it is that we choose to be in the world, right? Like sometimes I go to the store and it's like I just tell myself I want to be invisible today, and nobody talks to me, and it's kind of fun to go be in a crowd of people and not a single person talks to you. It's just, and other times it's like, I want people to notice me today. So, in like go in the grocery store, I want to be noticed. And you'll be walking into an aisle and all of a sudden people turn around and people start saying hi to you. Kids start running towards you. I mean, it's just fun to play with it. It's just to recognize the power of the mind is and thought is so much more profound than most of us ever realize. So that was what my purpose for today was. And I think you guys did really well. Does that make more sense to you now how it's kind of all integrated just around thought? It seems like such a simple subject, but it's pretty profound subject. All right, lovely ladies.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Thanks
Thanks.
for coming.
Yay. Bye
And
bye, everyone.
Yeah.
remember, you can look up those. I'll publish the name of the different um, manuals. So if you want to look further into those manuals that I referred to today, they're on Patreon. So it goes a little further into some of those subjects. Okay, love you all.
Love
Thank
you.
you.
Right. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.